Hello, ladies and gentlemen. This is the night that some of you have been waiting for. We're trying to here to review Dune 2. I know some of us are very, very excited to talk about this film. Some of us not so much, and some of us just kind of in the middle. So it's going to be a very layered review here. But we are here to talk about the cinematic epic known as Dune. Apparently, it's one of the greatest movies anyone has ever seen, which makes me wonder, how many movies have you actually seen? But before we get into that question, let's go ahead and introduce our guys joining us to discuss this film. Our good buddy, Mr. Rob Motto, iced out Mike and all. How you doing today, Rob?
I'm doing pretty good. It was okay.
And joining us from the corner of his own house, our good buddy Rick Aragon. How you doing there, Rick?
I'm doing very well here to celebrate, like I said, the Citizen Kane of science fiction.
That's apparently what we've been told. I don't know if we accept that or not, but you know, we're here tonight on Rumble, on YouTube, and on X here as well. We already got Dante joining us here, jumping over from a few streams. I know Spencer was doing his stream earlier. I know Paulie the Latino Slamp was doing his stream earlier. So there's a lot of Friday night streams all of a sudden. I don't know why everyone just decided to go with let's stream on Friday night. This is our night, Dan. Why not? But besides the point, we are here to review one of the most polarizing films of the last few years. I think it's only polarizing in our circle, because I think everyone else just like pretends like this is like the greatest movie since Casablanca. But I'm gonna go ahead and label this over to you guys, because this is all based on the heat, I guess the heat, but kind of the allure of the first Dune movie that we saw come out in 2021. And I feel like that film is massively overhyped, not just because everyone talking about how amazing that it is, but I feel like that movie came out in a time period where, let's be honest, everyone was pretty much trapped in their homes. Some people weren't allowed to go to, you know, movie theaters, whether it was because of state regulations or because of, you know, COVID vaccine mandates or mask mandates or wherever the case may be. They were locked away in their homes for about a year and a half. So when they were finally given the opportunity to see something, to see quite literally anything, they ran out to watch this Dune movie. And maybe if you've just been deprived for so long, the people would think that, oh, this was just an amazing cinematic experience. But for me, I had a complete opposite reaction to this. When I saw this film, I was bored to tears. I'm going to be very, very blunt with you. We can get into this kind of talking about our director here, our filmmaker responsible for this, because when it comes to him as a director, he's very, very hit and miss. However, there's a couple of films I think are pretty big misses here, but we're talking about, I know he has a very British pronouncing to this, because you think he would just say, oh, this is Denis Villeneuve or whatever
French.
it is, but yeah, or whatever. What did I say? Russian or?
You said British.
Yeah,
British. Oh, okay. So yeah,
he's a French Canadian. It's the worst kind.
The worst of both worlds.
Oh my God.
But yeah, so Denis here, or Denise, or whatever we want to pronounce
Denis.
him here.
Denis
Denis.
Villeneuve.
But no, so he was responsible for a few movies that we've seen over the last few years that have gotten pretty much polarizing reactions. Now, if you guys remember a 2016 film called Arrival, this is another movie that everyone claimed that they absolutely loved, was one of the best movies of the year. I saw it and thought it was a pretentious piece of crap. Now, apparently Rob agreed with me. I'm not sure where Rick flew on this whole thing, but it was the whole film about, the aliens coming to, I guess, communicate with humanity, but for some reason the Chinese wanted to blow them up, so we almost went into a world war over that whole thing. But I'm just sitting here like watching this whole movie. I'm just thinking to myself, what is going on here? What was even happening with this film? And then, of course, I'm reminded of a recent quote that Denis had regarding films. And he pretty much lambasted the idea that, film should have any kind of storytelling or dialogue to make it a good film. He even went as far as like slam dialogue, blaming television, essentially saying that television has ruined the minds of like the moviegoers. That this is about the art, the blah blah blah. So it's like, I'm sorry, like you can have all that stuff, you still gotta have a film that makes sense. Maybe I'm asking for too much here, but that's one of his big movies that we have a very polarized response of. Then of course you have Blade Runner 2049, a film that visually I thought looks amazing. Like there's a lot of things about that film that visually looks good, and I always give it credit for that. But storyline wise, it's another one of those movies where it's just like it's not really as interesting as a lot of people think that it is. Ryan Gosling and Anna de Armas, they had potential there. I don't think they ever fully realized it. And then there was a whole bunch of other things going on. I think Jared Leto was in that movie. Nobody even remembers he was in there, but he was there. And then, of course, we have Dune, which is, like I said, a movie that looked great. But my God, if you try to follow anything on a storytelling level, it's like visual waterboarding for the most part. So I'm going to start this off with you guys here, because maybe I'm a bit wrong. I'll start with you, Rob. What do you think about Denis here, his filmography, his style as a filmmaker? Do you like a lot of his stuff that he's done previously? What's kind of your take on him? And then I'll let Rick go.
Yeah, so I think that he's done two very good movies. One Sicario, the other is Prisoners. I think both of those are excellent. They're very well done. Outside of that, he's done a few experimental movies, things like Enemy. He's fine. He gets thrown in there as one of like the great directors, which I don't think he's quite there yet. I don't think he's on the same level as Scorsese or Nolan or Tarantino or the people that can almost generate a cinephile's delight. He kind of plays in that world a little bit, but I don't think he's quite there craft wise. But yeah, I think he's capable of making really good movies. I just think since Sicario, he's kind of done these bigger, very expansive science fiction heavy kind of movies that kind of fall short. I see the grand scale, I see the vision, and I'm a big fan of that. He's a little bit clumsy in terms of execution. So not my favorite guy, a guy I criticize more than I probably should, just because film Twitter loves to like say he's one of the best or one of the greatest working right now. I personally don't think so, but I think he's very talented.
Now, Rick, obviously you have the opposite opinion here of us. You actually really like Dune 2. I wish Sarah was here this week, because I would yell at both of you guys if I possibly could. But of course, Sarah's busy doing other things. She'll be back in 3 months like she always does. But I'll go ahead and shoot this one with you. What do you think about Denis here as a filmmaker? What do you think about some of his other films leading up to this movie?
Well, I also loved Sicario, and I can't say anything positive or negative about Arrival insofar as that I think it was good but not great, and I have not seen it since it came out, so I have very little memory of it. Yeah, I actually did enjoy the first Dune. I saw it 4 times, and yeah, I make no apologies. I think in terms of visual style, yeah, he has it. I don't think he's one of the great directors. I agree with Rob. I think that maybe
I mean,
film
he asked to
Twitter.
be if he saw his movie 4 times, right? Like,
Well,
he someone
just that
good.
movie. Just that movie. I haven't seen I haven't even seen Sicario more than once. So I think that
Keep
too
in
many
mind,
people, too many,
Sicario. Just
you
real
know,
quick, Sicario was written by Taylor Sheridan, so I think that probably has more to do with the fact that that film was so great. But no, continue.
no, could be. I think that film Twitter does overpraise him, and as someone who saw Blade Runner 2049, I agree with you, Jacob. It's visually stunning. It's beautiful to look at, but it is so boring for me. And for any person to say that it's better than the original Blade Runner, um, no, you're nuts. You're either nuts or you know very little about film. Blade Runner is one of the great films. Blade Runner 2049, really, apart from the visuals, who really remembers much of anything? I remember, working hard to stay awake throughout it, but no, I mean, he's good, he's not great. So that's my view of Denis Villeneuve.
Yeah, so I'm trying to think here because apparently he was one of the co-writers for the first movie. I think that one had three writers, and then he's one of the co-writers of this one too. I was thinking to myself, a lot of the films up until I think it was Prisoner for the most part, there was that big chunk of period there where he was just directing a lot of films. He wasn't really responsible for the writing of a lot of movies, and I feel like that he's probably better off being just kind of the visual director of a film rather than the writer. Because, like I said, if he's really honestly all about, I'm more of style over substance type person, then yeah, maybe you shouldn't be writing screenplays and doing dialogue since that's not your forte to begin with. And we've seen that there's at least a couple movies on there where he has done better in the direction chair. But these two films that he's done here, Dune, is also him essentially being at least somewhat responsible for the writing of this project. I don't know exactly. Excuse me. I don't know exactly how much he contributed to this one versus the last one. It looks like he was a little bit more involved with this one than the first one here. But do you think that maybe he should focus more on directing, or what do you think about him being both director and writer, Rob?
I mean, it's going to be hard to find people, even in the critical film, film critic world, to say that, oh, he needs to take a step back because he's going to get so much praise for this movie because it was such an insurmountable novel to adapt. I mean, Dune, like that's my father read Dune. You know what I mean? Like my father that I barely know, but one of the things I know,
Mm-hmm.
he read that book. I mean, that book is so massive in the minds of book readers, science fiction lovers, movie lovers. I think he's going to get so much credit for adapting the monstrosity that is that book. Dune Messiah is 300 pages. The next one is barely, you know what I mean? It's not even half of what Dune was. So, um, personally, I agree with you. I think he should take a step back. I don't think that he necessarily completely delivered here with this movie, but it's going to make a ton of money. He's only going to get success because of it. But I do think that he is better off focusing on the director job as to versus just writing a screenplay and directing.
Well, I don't think I mean, he's not the sole writer, so he's got that. There are other people involved. I think he probably should take a step back. If it's a case of maybe loving something too much, but I don't see anything particularly wrong with him being a writer. It would be different if he were the sole writer,
Mm-hmm.
but I think it's fine. It is such a massive project, and you've had a couple of stabs at it. You had David Lynch's version, which was curious, and then you had, I think, a miniseries. There are also secondary novels, and I think they're going to adapt a TV show around the Bene Gesserit, the female, the kind of nun-like females and all of this. So it's a massive universe, and this is an influential piece of literature for a lot of science fiction. Like, we've heard people compare it to Star Wars, Star Trek, all of these. Dune came ahead of everything except I think at one time when Rob was talking about all of these influences, or that it looked like it. Flash Gordon's the only thing that came before Dune. Everything else came after. But I can see the similarities. All I can say is that yes, maybe Denis needs to not focus so much on the writing. Let other people write, and he will just focus solely on the visuals, which are very arresting. I would say in Dune 1 and Dune 2.
Yeah, especially when you're I would say, especially when you're not good at it, you probably should work on not focusing on that. So, um, this is gonna be kind of hard to kind of, I guess, pick up where we left off here describing the story. So I want to focus on the cast here for a second because obviously that was the big thing with the first movie. Pretty much every actor in Hollywood has some kind of contributing role to this film. We all know about the main stars, which is this film kind of lives and breathes on Timothy Chalamet and Zendaya. Obviously, Rebecca Ferguson is in there. We'll talk about coming the controversy revolving her this week. You got Josh Brolin, Austin Butler, Florence Pugh, Dave Bautista, Christopher Walken, Leia Seydoux, I believe is her name, the French chick who was in Mission Impossible that one time. One of the Skarsgårds is in this film, and Anna Taylor-Joy, who's in the film for like literally all of what 10 seconds, and that whole scene, we'll get to her here too. So pretty much the only people who weren't back for this one, I believe, were Oscar Isaac and Jason Momoa, who both, you know, bit the farm in the first movie. So they obviously weren't here, but you have so many other people that are here as well. Do you think that it's kind of a burning or a wise strategy to have so many big name actors in one project here? Because, like I said, there's a lot of times where you'll see, like Florence Pugh, for instance, she's in the film for roughly the first like 3 minutes, like she's doing like the opening monologue, kind of like setting the stage for the film, and then you literally don't see her again until almost like 2 hours in, where you forget that she was even in the movie. So it's like it does get to a point where you have a little too many cooks in the kitchen. But what's your thoughts on just the cast size, Rob?
Yeah, I mean this is a side effect of having so much information and so many different characters that service the plot
Yeah,
without it being a gimmick of, hey, these are plot-driven characters. This is the juggling act that Denis Villeneuve has to play with here. It's like Christopher Walken, Florence Pugh were great, but they have 5 minutes of screen time. Okay, maybe that's being a bit disingenuous. 10
maybe
minutes of
10.
screen time.
Maybe
No,
10.
but seriously, they don't have much on screen to sort of get
Mm,
their importance across. I mean, we don't even see the Emperor in the first movie,
yeah.
or Florence Pugh's character. So, uh, this is that's a challenge. I will say that the newcomers, I think, all add to the movie. I don't think they take away. But again, that leaves less time for you to develop these characters. A lot of even Rebecca Ferguson's character is basically on screen to service the plot. You know what I mean? And it's sort of hard to develop those characters on a more substance based level. You know, it's great for a close up of Timothy Chalamet half a dozen times, but it kind of looks like a Revlon commercial. You know what I mean? It's like I I get it. I understand. It's beautiful people. These the sun is
An
setting, the
herbal essence
orange.
commercial.
Right, but it's like it's a little like, okay, these kind people all look like fashion models and whatever. It's fine. Like I
Even
get
though
it.
they're all supposed to be dirty sand people, they say they somehow still.
And all of this is in a 2 hour and 46-minute runtime. You know what I mean? It's already a
Hmm.
very long movie. So
Oh God,
it does
can you
take
imagine?
patience.
Can you imagine like a Snyder cut of this movie where it's like 5 hours long?
But you know,
That's a
to sum up,
miniseries.
basically, yes, it does become apparent at a certain level that the characters are a bit thin, but especially during the second act, it moves pretty quickly. So, you know, you're not noticing as much maybe during that first act or parts of the third act.
Rick, you did bring up a good point here, but I want to get back to that after basically telling your thoughts on kind of the characters and how they kind of blend into this massive story here.
Well, I thought on the whole it did pretty well, though the first hour or so was so Arrakis focused that, yeah, you did kind of forget everything about the Emperor and Princess Irulan and the Awesome Butler character. They just kind of were there, and I felt they were almost rushed. It was a waste to have Christopher Walken in such a small part, and it almost felt to me like so much in the first hour or hour and a half felt like already a long movie, and then you had kind of to throw in, oh, okay, we need the Harkonnens back, we need the Emperor back, we need their machinations back. So yeah, that's it'll be hard to try to balance so many characters in such a, even in a long film like this. On the whole, I think it was not bad, but then I'm slightly prejudiced in that I actually enjoyed the first Dune, and I didn't have a major issue with it. But those little parts that felt like they were setting up things for the inevitable third one, like one of the Bene Gesserit who gets knocked up by Fade. It's like, well, where is this coming from? Like, is this going to set up for the part three? Are they? Is that going to play a part? Though again, I've never read the book. I tried, and I only remember the David Lynch version, which, well, yeah,
with Sting.
yes, with Sting.
Well, they talk about controlling Austin Butler's character, which, by the way, I love. I love that kind of detail, by the way, the political machinations and everything. I was very interested in that. I really liked that, because it's like that adds a layer to all the sort of like galactic good and evil kind of nonsense. It's like, okay, this actually is a level of political strategy that's being sort of implemented here. I like stuff like that, especially in something that's supposed to kind of be a sci-fi blockbuster.
Yeah, but if you look at this, I've seen some complaints online. It's like, oh, they didn't bring up the Space Guild. It's like, you already have quite a packed production.
Right.
You really don't need more. And just real quick, if anyone wants to see the TV version, I think they released a TV version of Dune, the movie, where they had an opening section that was just not animated, but a series of illustrations trying to explain everything that happened before. It actually makes the plot more confusing. It takes like 15 minutes and you still don't quite understand what's going on because it goes back into the rise of the machines and the fall of the machines. And it's like, I was like, I'm more confused now. So I think on the whole, you've got some good performances here. It's a shame that Christopher Walken again had very little to do, but Austin Butler really did such a good job in this. It's almost a shame to think that he lost Best Actor. Yeah, I mean, in fairness, I haven't seen The Whale, but it's a shame. It just shows that he is
Well,
a
maybe
very
if
skilled
Elvis was
actor.
gay, he would have gotten the award. How about that?
He was fat. Elvis was a heavy set.
So if he
So
was just gay, he would have won it. Eh? That's all he needed.
Yeah,
Now,
I will say real quick, but like I thought that Butler absolutely disappeared, especially when he was doing his he was like doing his scream or whatever when he
yeah.
was in the arena and shit. He completely disappeared inside that character. It was an impressive performance.
Well, yeah, we're going to get to this later on here because there was a lot of complaints about how they handled this character, especially towards the end. That kind of gets into a little bit spoiler here, so we'll save that one for the end. But let's talk about this before we really get into the story here. I feel like with a film like this, because it's so long and it's so extensive and there's so much that needs to be explained and so much that needs to be talked about here, it feels like this film, and it's kind of ironic listening to Denis criticism about like television, because I'm looking at this film and it's like maybe this would have worked better if this was actually like a mini series or like almost like a TV show, that, in the sense that when you have so much to talk about, it is kind of hard to like cram everything into an acceptable frame, and acceptable being anywhere between 2.5 to 3 hours, because here we are, like I said, we were saying right before we went live here, these two movies have already gone on over 5 hours of content. You still have a third one that's coming around the corner, which we'll probably get to in another I guess 3 years whenever that film comes out, which means now you're probably looking at 8 hours worth of entertainment, and you're still not going to be done by the time the third one is in. It's like, at what point do you just say, hey, like, instead of like spending like $500 million or $1 billion on like 3 separate films, like, why don't you just do a series? And do you think the series would flow a lot better if they didn't have to like try to cram everything in one shot?
no.
That's
I
just
think,
you.
yeah. Well, look, I would just say, I've thought about this. If this is supposed to be the middle section, where were all these people complaining about what they're comparing it to? Two Towers, Empire Strikes Back. Those are the mid sections, and no one says, "Oh well, maybe we should have just made a TV series." Yeah, we'd get the Star Wars Holiday Special out of it. I can go with the fact that it's long, and I also have to remind people we did have a Dune miniseries. I don't think it did very well. We're getting a Bene Gesserit television series pretty soon, I think, on Max, HBO Max, whatever they call it nowadays. So it's not like if they are starved for material. You've got the original novel and the sequels and the ones that have been written by his son after I think they're still going. So I don't think you need to have this. I mean, people are willing to sit for days watching the world's longest and most expensive soap opera. They're willing to watch
Maybe less
every
so these days.
yeah. Well, no, I mean, they're willing to watch. I mean, no, when they were having a release for was it Endgame or Avenger Infinity War, whatever, there were people who went to the theater and stayed days watching all these movies. Are these the same people that say, "Oh, well, I can't sit through 5 hours of Dune Part One and Part Two. That's too long." But yeah, I'll watch. I'll spend days watching Love and Thunder or Captain America 4 or whatever it is. I mean, really stop complaining. It's a long movie.
Well,
It's a
here's
long
where I will
British
push
movie.
back. Here's where I'll push back on that because you mentioned the Two Towers as one of your examples. It's like, well, the Two Towers is an adventure film. It's like they put you into an adventure throughout the 3 hours that those movies went on here. This is not an adventure movie. This is just a plain sci-fi. You can call it an epic only because of its size and its scale, but it's not the same style of film as the Two Towers have, where you can have, if you're going on a series of steps here in the story and going on an adventure, you can have a much longer movie because you're exposing the audience to a lot more than you would versus this film where it feels like there's only a couple of locations that you get throughout the course of this film, even though we stretch out to 3 hours for the most part.
I mean,
Well,
it's a science fiction religious epic with political machinations behind it. I mean,
Mhm.
it's supposed to be a high-minded, hard sci-fi thing where it's literature. It's considered literature. It's not even considered science fiction. A science fiction novel. I mean, it is, but it's in that kind of pantheon. And so it's like that's what you're trying to give people. You're trying to give people a high-minded, I guess what you call a high-minded critique of the human race, with these cultural, religious, political crap in the background, for lack of a better word. So I mean, I get it. I get it's not going to be everybody's cup of tea. I personally love the idea of a film director having a long form idea for storytelling, just because you don't get this kind of thing on TV. You can criticize Villeneuve's vision or whatever, but I love the attempt and I love the idea behind creating this massive, epic, long form narrative. Now, you run into the issues that Scorsese runs into with his 3.5 hour runtime. It's like at some point you just get tired of it. So
Mhm.
the investment has to be there by audiences. I'm kind of surprised that Dune is. I mean, this is almost like a it like it's like you're in a test lab. And you're just like, hey, I hope this works because the material is incredibly dense. So you know what I mean? I appreciate the attempt, even if the execution isn't 100% all the way there.
And to be fair, like with the Irishman, it was a 3.5 hour movie. I think the first 3 hours was actually very, very well paced. It was only the last 30 minutes where I felt like basically once they fast forward to the present day and they're all old and they're all in jail, basically like dying away. I think that's where the pacing just kind of fell off the cliff and you really start feeling the runtime. But I thought up to that point it was really well. I also look at another film we talked about a couple of years ago, RRR. That's a 3 hour movie, but that one is so well paced. You're actually expecting more rather than being disappointed when it's all over. So the runtime isn't always indicative of the quality of the movie, but if you're going to go long, you have to keep that certain pace up where the audiences are essentially going to be sitting there for 3 hours and they're not going to be like, oh god, what time do I get out of here? How long? I mean, we already got to sit through like 25 to 30 minutes now of previews before every show. I'm not sure if you guys know this, but they've upped the preview time at movie theaters, at least at Regal. I don't know if it's the same at AMC, but it used to be 20 minutes of trailers, then you get the movie. Now Regal is basically 25 to 30 minutes of trailers before you get the movie. So if you're running late, just show up like 30 minutes after your runtime, and then that's when the actual film starts. But so let's talk about this aspect because this is something that I've got some pushback from some people in this room. I wonder who that could possibly have been, but obviously when you watch the first film and you look at the second film, this one, part two, you can very clearly see a lot of religious undertones with this movie. Now, somebody had, I think it was Spencer Smith, that actually sent me this. I want to say it was last week or maybe like the week before, and there was a lot of conspiracy theories going online that this series, Dune, was setting up, quote unquote, the Antichrist. Now, for some of you guys are thinking to yourself, how is that possible that they're doing this? If you guys have watched my Monday night show, the Bible Lynn show, I've gone into very length and detail about kind of how Islam is quite literally the religion of the Antichrist. So it's not something I'm just pulling out of my butt there. Go back and watch those episodes; they're up there. But with the writer, the original writer, who I believe is, what's his name, Hubert? What's his name?
Herbert.
Herbert.
Yeah.
Yeah, so I obviously did a little digging here. This guy, when he was writing the course of this story and like creating this universe, he took religious undertones from essentially every religion you can possibly think of. So there's obviously a lot of Islam in this film, a lot of Catholicism, a lot of Buddhism, and a lot of like basically it's a melting pot of religious values and undertones. So the big point of this is that the story of this one is essentially based on the idea that these people in the desert are waiting on the Mahdi to show up, to be their ruler, to be the anointed one, which is very similar to how Islam is waiting for their Mahdi, in the same premise here. Now, that Mahdi actually is the Antichrist. I don't know if this writer here was eventually thinking to himself, oh, I'm going to essentially write, something about like the Antichrist. I don't think that's what he was thinking here, because when you really get into the depths of the story, we can talk about this when we start talking about other characters, is that this is a guy who was apparently raised by Jesuit women or Catholic aunts, and he was basically under a very harsh, oppressive religious home that he rebelled against. And part of the inspiration of this story was using this platform to like criticize the Catholic religion and criticize Jesuits and that stuff. So when I was sitting here watching this film, especially the first few minutes when you're watching Rebecca Ferguson's character of Lady Jessica, who is partly supposed to be kind of like the women who he grew up with, and it's also an angle of the Virgin Mary as well. I can see just from the way that the story is being told, this is a guy that clearly had an issue with the Roman Catholic Church. Now, I have too, so I'm not going to sit here and defend them by any stretch of the imagination, but I can sit here by the stories being told here is that Ferguson's character is basically trying to convince everyone that her son is Mahdi, whether he actually is or not, right? So there's a lot of like, the parallels there to him and this person that everyone's waiting for, but it's not really known if he's a hit or not. So she's basically trying to fulfill the prophecy herself, so that way she can gain power, she can gain control, and that's kind of the theme that you just see a lot here, and that's almost a direct parallel to the Roman Catholic Church. So I could see those influences here. So let me shoot this one over to you guys here, because obviously this is a big part of the movie. You can't really discuss it without it. What is kind of your take on the religious aspects of this film by trying to mold so many of these religions that have real life implications to it, but trying to do it in a sci-fi setting here? Do you think that was, like I said, do you think this is basically just a writer trying to rebel against, his upbringing with, his mother and his aunts, or do you think there was something more here? I guess I could start with Rob, so we kind of talked about this a little bit more.
Yeah, I mean, I think I personally think it's because religion's always been used to control people, and that goes for the Romans, where the Roman Catholic Church comes from.
Yep.
I mean, that's a tool for controlling the masses. And, Zendaya's character kind of is warning them at certain points that, that's the very thing that enslaves us or prevents us from fighting, is we're waiting for the we're Messiah. Basically, we're waiting for the chosen one to come and lead us and free us and all of that. And this is actually a very, very, I say this all the time, most movies are not political. Dune is very political.
Yeah.
Where you're basically, at a certain point, Paul and his mother are both playing up this Messiah belief, even though they don't actually believe it, which means they are very much inherently political animals throughout this whole movie. Kind of playing close to the vest. I mean, he pretty much tells Zendaya he doesn't really believe in it, but he's trying to basically bring freedom to the Fremen by however he can. And by the end of the movie, it's a very interesting arc for him, where it's like you can kind of see what's going to happen, how he's aligning himself for the most beneficial outcome. But it's just that, like, you're never going to escape these these systems that exist and have existed for thousands, tens of thousands of years. So I think it's a very interesting aspect of the story. But I don't look into it in any kind of religious way. It's just, hey, how do the people who need to manipulate others, how do they utilize religion? How do they utilize it in this political manner?
Yeah, I'll go to Rick here before I'll make a point about that because you did touch up on something. I'll get Rick's thoughts on this whole thing, the religious aspect of Dune from the way you see it.
Well, you did make an interesting point. I was not aware of Frank Herbert's issue with Catholicism, if that's the case, but I can see how the Bene Gesserit, this sisterhood, is not portrayed in the best way because they are manipulative. They are seeking ultimate power, and they're doing selective breeding to, create their messiah. But the way I look at it is that this works in that particular universe, not specifically any. I don't want to draw or think that there's any actual parallel between that world of Dune and our world. And I think I've mentioned this before, and I think I read it somewhere that the reason that you get a lot of these terms like Mahdi, jihad, uh, all of that is because it sounds very foreign and it sounds very almost mystical and otherworldly, not to Western ears. Because I don't think when he wrote this, like when the late 50s, early 60s, that people were as aware of what Islam had and its tenets as they are today. So I really don't think that it's anything particularly overt. The way I look at it, though, is that it is the idea that Lady Jessica, for example, comes to believe that she somehow is, and from that she will derive power. So she becomes as corrupted as the Reverend Mother. So she's willing to do this and throw her son, potentially kill him, to gain power because she is taken on this sort of messianic view of herself and her child. I don't know if that's reflective of Mary. I don't think Mary had that idea. The closest is when she just told people at the wedding, do whatever he tells you to, but it's not necessarily like, oh, well, because I will be, queen of heaven. I don't know.
Well,
I don't know if that's how Catholics see it.
it's a couple ways to look at it, and I find it very interesting from this perspective because obviously from a secular point of view there's a lot that people issues that people have with the Roman Catholic Church, and obviously there's a secular view of it, and then there's actually a biblical view of it. The biblical view of it is that, look, everything that the Roman Catholic Church preaches is just simply not of God. It's not written in the Bible. It's not preached like at all. Whether from the secular point of view, because they have more of the problem with God himself or Christ himself, they view Catholicism as, because it's viewed to be the biggest Christian religion in the world, they view anything reference to Catholicism as to God. So when they're going after this aspect of, like I said, Lady Jessica, who's supposed to be kind of like this mother Mary figure, I don't know why I forgot Mary's name there for a second, but then when she they view her as this like Mary like figure, in a way it's kind of like, the pagan worship of like the daughter and the daughter, the mother and the son, and kind of how they built this whole thing based on, like I said, Roman Catholicism. It was all based on, well, there's Mary, then there's Jesus, who's the son of Mary, and that's kind of like the whole dynamic here. So when they were putting this film together, that's what they were trying to match here, because in the film, Timothy Chalamet is supposed to be, quote unquote, the Messiah character. At least he's perceived to be that way. So he's supposed to be essentially the Jesus figure of this story, whether his mother, representing of Mary, being Jessica here, is supposed to be kind of like the Catholic, Holy Mother Mary figure as portrayed in this film. So that's what they were going for. Now, obviously, like I said, when you're blending so many like religions together, there's certain degrees of truth and then there's certain degrees of lie to it. And if you're not really well versed in kind of the in-depth of a lot of these religions, I think for the most part, it probably just goes over a lot of people's heads. Like, they're just simply like, don't see it. So I don't really knock anyone for just saying that, oh, I don't really see like any of that in there, because you really have to get deep into doctrine and notice like these things. So it's like there's only going to be a few people who are watching Dune to begin with, or even going to notice this a bit first off. Go ahead, Rick.
I would just say that at least Dune does have the idea of kind of a split. you remember that Chani, the Zendaya character, she's very dismissive of her. Was it the North or the Southern Fremen who are fundamentalists? And they use the term fundamentalists, as opposed. And she like, no, I don't believe. None of us from the North believe that there is such a thing as the Mahdi, let alone that Paul Atreides is. Uh, the Javier Bardem character, on the other hand, you see him as very fervent and very sincere and absolute in his faith. I mean, he constantly goes on about it, even things that would potentially negate uh, Paul being the Messiah are things that, oh no, he's too humble. You see, the reason he is the Mahdi is because he's too humble to say he's the Mahdi. Therefore, he's the Mahdi. So you've got those
Hmm.
diametric opposing forces. And credit to Dune, if you want to have some sort of vaguely mystical, spiritual, uh, religious, new age
Yeah.
type idea, that they're willing to give uh, both the non-believer and the fervent believer equal up, or at least a good chance to put out their own arguments. At the end, you notice that Shawnee still does not believe that this person is the Messiah, and is well angry for a variety of reasons, separate from the idea that yeah, you're not, you're not the
I,
Messiah.
I know this is going just a little bit ahead of ourselves here, but that ending sequence where like Zendaya is like, "How dare he choose the white girl over me?" and then like just have like her entire like mental breakdown afterwards. It's like, really, that's where you're drawing the line after everything we've gone to at this very point.
Well,
It's
because
like,
you're
I
dubbing
mean,
her for the princess, for the future empress. Why not?
and unfortunately, I read ahead to see what Dune Messiah is about, so it's like
Hmm.
whatever. It's not even an issue, basically. But it's like, I mean, I get it, but it's also like, okay, bitch, this is for the galaxy. Okay, we can figure our shit out later. But like,
Yeah.
this is like all those people are trying to kill me now because we have control of the
This
spice.
is quite literally not the time.
Right?
So, but like I say, so like there's definitely things into it. I'll probably go a little bit more in depth to this on one of the Monday shows, but I just wanted to point that out because obviously it does play a big role in this film. But I want to kind of get back to the storyline or whatever left of the story is actually here because it's just kind of a slog for a few minutes. I like the pacing of this film a lot better than the first movie. I thought the first one was entirely too much setup, entirely too much introduction of literally every single characters in the entire universe, and it wasn't very interesting because like I said, it was just setup. There was never any kind of like upping of the stakes or moving the story along. It's just like, here, we need to introduce every single person who's going to be involved in kind of not only just that film, the first part of Dune, but all the movies that are going to happen like in the future. It's like you have to at least kind of know somewhat about everyone, and I just thought that was a terrible creative decision. Like even like the second time I went back and watched it like this week, and even like the second time around, just like this is just dry. It's like I know all the actors, like I see Oscar Isaac, I see Josh Brolin, I know who they're supposed to represent, I know Dave Bautista and everybody there, but it's just like you got to give me something here because this is just crawling wrong. Because this one starts off kind of in the middle where we don't need to go through that whole introduction phase anymore. Now we can kind of just get into like the meat and potatoes of the story. Now we can actually have characters bond with each other and conflict with each other. That actually creates interest in the story. Now you can see things progress a lot more. You see a lot more action, a lot more battle. So it's like, okay, now it feels like we're actually getting into it. Like it's sad to say what the second act of what this series is supposed to be, and it felt like it flowed a lot better here. I kind of I'm not going to say that it's anywhere near like Hunger Games, for example, but Hunger Games, they broke that into 4 movies, and the second one was the only one that was ever any good. But the second one was the one that was like, okay, we've already established everything, you guys know what's going on, and go. Like they just went like straight forward, and it was much better as a result. And I feel like this one feels the same way. What's kind of your thoughts on the big differences between this one and the first one, Rob?
Yeah, I will say the first, there is a scene when Timothy Chalamet has to prove himself by doing
Mm-hmm.
the worm riding. I actually genuinely felt like a slight panic when he's sliding down what seems that he's sliding down the sand,
Yeah.
and you realize later it's like the actual worm itself. But like I actually felt panic because I was like, I don't know what's gonna happen next. It's such that is one
Yeah.
of the rarest feelings to get as somebody that goes to the movies week after week after week for new movies. I haven't felt like that in a long time. So that was like a cool thing. And yeah, the pacing in the first act is pretty slow. Once you get past that first hour 20-minute mark, it flows a lot better. It's almost like the editor remembered, oh yeah, we have to keep going back and forth so that we break up all this sand. Because I mean, it's these don't and they're well shot, these vistas. And I think it's a lot more effective than the first movie. But I will say this second movie, part 2, has so much more in it that they have to shove in 2 hours and 46 minutes. So as much as like it's an improvement, it's also a challenge in terms of editing it properly so that things feel spaced out and properly paced. It's still a challenge. It's still a lot that they're shoving in there. And again, I don't think it's perfect, but the more I think about it, the more I am impressed with what they were able to kind of pull off. But yeah, there are still long stretches where you're just like, okay, when's this gonna when are we gonna cut here?
I was like, okay, let's wrap this up here. But yeah, Rick, obviously you have more favorable views of the first one from the second one. What did you think of the style, the pace change from this movie from the first one?
Well, I do think that the first hour or hour and a half, when when they are on Arrakis, with maybe one or two cuts to the Harkonnen on Gidi Prime, or maybe it was Arrakis. It was sometimes hard to tell. It did kind of just seem to be a lot of filler, because once we get back to Gidi Prime, and we get to see Austin Butler and all that battle, then it starts to move. It starts to go faster, faster, a little
Yeah,
perhaps too fast, because I almost felt like they were trying to compress everything in, and almost like have the movie end. And the problem has always been with Dune Part One, they were never quite sure that there was going to be a part two, even though they billed it as part one. It kind of ends with her saying this is only the beginning, and it could have been an open ending. Here, you kind of get kind of an open ending, and you've already eliminated uh, the Harkonnens, and you get the end for them. So again, it almost felt like, oh, we need to tack something on here that's going to say, well, you're going to get a third part. It's not quite organized as well as I thought it could have been, but there were certain parts of it that were much more impressive visually than the first one. Certainly that worm sequence when he's writing it, I think everyone in the audience kind of felt there was this complete silence as you were kind of moving into the ground. And that sequence on what I believe Gidi Prime, the Harkonnen world, that's visually arresting there. And even the fireworks going off is like, you're
Is
not.
there no light like sun there? Like what's the
It's the
thing with
dark sun.
they're all white?
Remember, they did say it was the dark sun,
Okay.
that made it look like that, and it was quite deliberately visual. So I give them credit for that. But for me, it felt we could have spent a little less time on Arrakis, because yeah, we kind of get that they're arguing whether or not he is the chosen one, the Messiah, or not. I think we could have cut some of that off and then gone to the machinations of the Emperor and the Harkonnens, especially because at the end it almost felt like, oh, you're rushing to get to that and try to finish up the film. Also, kind of a side note, I kind of remember I remember the David Lynch Dune. So I'm almost like filling in what's going on, what's going on, what's going on. Granted, we didn't get that twist with the Harkonnen in that film than we did here. So I don't know how close that is to the novel, which kind of threw me off.
Is
But
okay, can I have you read the novel?
no, I couldn't get through it.
So, and this is big ass spoiler. So I'm just gonna say that right now. Spoiler alert. It okay, and you don't know, so maybe I shouldn't even ask the question. But is he really related to the whatever the Harkonnens or whatever?
Harkonnens. Well, in fairness, Lady Jessica was not aware that she
Right.
was the Baron's daughter. Oh, sorry, there is a spoiler. Until like close to the end of the film, or or somewhere along the line. So she was not aware of it.
And of course, listen, I do like how it's delivered in the movie and everything, but I immediately just thought of Darth Vader. It's just like the parallels. I just can't help like drawing parallels to Star Wars with this whole fucking movie.
Well, true. Even though, again, Dune does precede technically.
I know.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know if that's original to the novel. I imagine it is. Otherwise, we would have heard a greater outcry from Dune fanatics. But it
There's
does.
still time.
There's still. So I can't say for sure, but okay. So we'll take it. We'll take that. We'll take Words of Paradise's word.
Yeah.
So here's the thing. Like we've talked about this on quite a few shows now, and it's reared its ugly head again. Dave Bautista, because there's this narrative on the internet that Dave Bautista is actually a good actor, and I'm just like to myself, what movies are you possibly watching here? Because once again, he's in this film, and his role has definitely been diminished in this movie than it was in the first film. But it seems like his sole purpose of this movie is just yelling as if he's still Drax the Destroyer on the Marvel MCU films. The only difference is that he doesn't have to pretend to be stupid in this film, but that's basically his entire like arc in this movie is to yell at people and then get punked out in one embarrassing scene that pretty much kills his character entirely. So it's like, what do you think of Dave Bautista as an actor? Is he moving towards Oscar winning territory here with this movie?
I saw somebody post on Twitter that like he was amazing in Dune Part 2. I was like, what movie did you see? I mean, he's getting his ass kicked the entire movie, and then like Austin Butler almost kills him, and then he ends up, I think Josh Brolin ends up finishing him off or whatever near the end of the movie. But it's like he's barely in the movie, he fails, and then he gets killed off. So I've never thought Dave Bautista was a good actor. I don't know where this comes from. Yeah, there was the one decent scene in Blade Runner 2049. That's about it.
Well, I mean, maybe they were just overwhelmed with Glass Onion, because we know that's going to be used in his inevitable Kennedy Center honors. No, I don't think he's a good actor. I don't even think he's particularly good in this film or in this role. Although I think he actually has slightly more to do here than in the first one. In the first one, I don't think he was a major character. You were expecting more. He seemed almost comical, actually, when you think about it, because he was perpetually inept at everything that the Baron kept telling him to do. He couldn't do it. He kept messing up and messing up and messing up. But again, who hasn't wanted to see Dave Bautista kiss someone's boot? I mean, that's just like the highlight of cinema, sir. But no, I don't think he's good. I don't think he's ever been good. But there you go.
It's just like I just don't know why we keep like pretending like, oh, he has range. He's not like John Cena or The Rock. It's like John Cena and The Rock on screen are far more entertaining than Dave Bautista ever be in his entire life. I'm sorry.
They've also opened movies that have made money, and I know that neither one is a good actor, but still, yeah, Dave Bautista can't really say that.
What wasn't he in Stuber? Wasn't that like a turning point also?
Oh yeah, that was certainly a turning point where I went from hating Dave Bautista to despising Dave Bautista. That was a turning point. Yeah, he's not great, but there's a few other people we can talk about here for a second. Zendaya is another one who. Here, guys, we can have this kind of debate here because obviously she's gotten awards for like so many things like in her past. I don't think she's a bad actress, but I just don't see her being as good as a lot of people are saying that she is. It feels like it's more of like a fame and popularity contest over her actual acting ability in this movie. And for the course of this film, she's basically there just to be like the moody, I don't want to say teenager, even though she looks like a teenager, but just kind of just be like the movie, the representative of, oh, he's not the Messiah. Oh, how can you guys sit here and listen to this? It's like basically just like squawking and complaining the entire time, which is very endearing for someone like me. Just want to hear a woman talking for 3 hours here. But am I saying something wrong here about Zendaya? What was kind of your thoughts on her in this film or this series so far?
Yeah, I actually thought she gave the second best performance behind Austin Butler. I think that her character goes through a lot in this movie. I mean, she doesn't even
Oh
really
yeah.
know. She doesn't even know Paul Atreides. He has more of a relationship with her because he's been dreaming about her. It's from the first movie, and so she meets this guy and witnesses her killing that dude to who challenged him at the end of the first movie, and then helps them escape the whatever Harcadians, and they go through a lot. They really do. And I actually really enjoyed both actors like vulnerability with each other. It made it believable that they were falling in love. And she's defending him to her own tribe, basically, this stranger. She doesn't believe in the prophecy, but she believes in him. And like that really actually comes through. That really, I think, is what so much of her performance is about. And then the look of betrayal on her face in that final scene was heartbreaking. I mean, it didn't move me to tears like some people have said on film Twitter, but it's like, okay, yeah, that's
Like that there
genuinely.
was just like black women like bawling when they were like watching that. It's like he left her for the white girl. I can't believe he did this.
But I do think it was a genuinely good performance. I think that one of the most underrated qualities in an actor is a character changing their mind or realizing something and going from one emotion to the next. Like it truly is one of the hardest things to pull off as an actor. I like Zendaya. I've liked her for a while now. I think the debate is hilarious about her looks because look, yes, she is a model. However, it's like in that way that people were joking about how fashion models are actually not attractive. They might have a good frame to wear clothes and stuff on a runway. Whatever. I understand both sides of this where it's like some people think she's like a 5 and we could have gotten a more attractive actress. And then there's other people who are like, yeah, it's more of an understated beauty. You know what? I literally said she reminds me of Eartha Kitt. You guys know who Eartha Kitt is, where it's like, yeah, there's gonna be men who find her attractive. There's gonna be men who are like, no, thank you. So it's that I kind of put Zendaya in that category. Rick will know who I'm talking about, but no, I did genuinely think she gave a very good performance in this movie.
What do you think, Rick?
Santa baby, put a label under the tree for me. Sorry, that's the Eartha Kitt. If you at least you will recognize Santa baby, her very
Ernest Scared
perfect.
Stupid. That's why I know Eartha Kitt.
I know her as one of the cat women from the TV show.
Yep, and
Yeah,
Holes. She's
yeah,
the grandmother in Holes.
yeah.
Yep.
We'll put it this way. Yeah, I can kind of see that, not completely. I think Zendaya gave a very good performance because she was the, for lack of a better term, voice of reason. She was not someone who was going to just accept Paul as the Mahdi Messiah, what have you. But she was conflicted because she also was falling in love with him, and it's a credit to Villeneuve that there are certain scenes that look just beautiful, and with the score it seemed like, yes, they were just like really falling in love. I thought she did a very good performance, so I'm pleased with it. I think she's better here than she was in the first one. Granted, she was not a major part in the first one. Here she is more, but I like the fact that she was willing to say, no, I don't believe you people are stupid, basically, for accepting this as this guy as the Mahdi, the savior, the Messiah. And I think it is a genuine heartbreak. Rob was right when he said it's a genuine heartbreak when she sees her basically being dumped, even though he tells her, I will love you no matter what, but hey, I'm going with the future empress, and I'm going to marry her so that I
But
could
I mean,
control
at the
the
same
empire.
time, I'm like, if all you've been doing for the last 3 hours is crapping on the idea of this guy being the Messiah, it's like, why wouldn't he not go with somebody else towards the end of the movie? Like, I understand like the setup here, but it's like, at the same time, I mean, you've been spending the whole time like crapping on this whole idea that
But
he's our chosen one, right?
she's in love with Paul. She's not in love with the Mahdi. So
It's a lot
yeah,
of inner conflict too, with that whole thing. Like, human beings are contradictions.
Mm.
Love makes human beings into contradictions where it's just like, how did I wind up here?
I ask myself that every Tuesday, actually.
Yeah.
point being, I think she did a good performance. I think she did a good job. And I mean, I have not seen Euphoria, where she won the Emmy, and I think she's
Yeah,
the
you're
youngest.
I mean,
not,
she
you're not
basically
missing
just
any,
plays a
yeah.
drugged out, depressed teenager, So
Oh well, that's like every
So
teenager
Zendaya.
that I know.
yeah, right.
So,
And I
but
know what
point
you
is,
mean, though. It doesn't seem like she has a whole lot of range, but yeah, it's. I think she's when the material is good, she can be good, but like I don't know. We'll see. We'll see
well,
going
yeah,
forward.
okay. Well, she's to kind of piggyback on Rob's terminology. She's as good as her material. She's one of those actresses who is as good as her material. There are some. I think she did a good job in this film, and she played the part as she was directed to, and as the part was written for. So I think she met the goal that she was asked to meet.
So let's talk about Timothy Chalamet here for a second, because maybe I'm being a bit hyperbolic here. I don't think I've seen a single movie that he's been in that I've actually liked. And I know he's kind of like Hollywood's like big it guy like right now, like on the rise, him and Zendaya. But it's like I'm literally looking back thinking to myself, it's like, what has he been in that has been any good? Like the only thing that I could see, he's been in a couple like Oscar bait movies like Call Me by Your Name and Lady Bird. So maybe because no, he was in those films, everyone pretends like he's like, I just don't see it out of
Oh,
him. Like
you didn't see him in Little Women?
no, why would I watch Little Women?
Yeah, I didn't
See,
realize he was even in Little Women.
yeah, because it's by one of the it's by one of the greatest filmmakers of all time, Greta Gerwig. How dare you? Dare you not?
Yeah, Words of Paradise, you're
Yeah,
clearly
I don't know.
saying here that the books have absolutely no bearing on the films whatsoever, because like it's
He was,
almost like
what? He was
go ahead.
good in The King. There was a Netflix movie that came out, I think, in 2017 called The King,
I
where Robert
disagree.
Pattinson plays a terrible French.
Oh
Oh
my
my God,
gosh.
that was the terrible performance of that movie. But I actually thought
Yeah.
he was good in The King. I have
I,
not really liked Timothy Chalamet. I will say that in Dune Part 2, this was one of his better performances, especially in the last 2 hours, where he really starts to gravitate towards that, that
messianic,
whatever
Mahdi,
Messiah
yeah,
sort of
messianic view of
persona.
himself.
Antichrist.
I would kind of disagree. I didn't care for him in The King, but Robert Pattinson sounded like Dracula's grandson in that movie. Was just that was really bad, and I don't know why I don't know why I keep getting told that Robert Pattinson is his generation's Peter O'Toole, that this unimpeachably
I
brilliant
don't think there's a
actor.
single person that's ever uttered that sentence ever.
He
Besides
good
me,
in Good Time. Have you ever seen Good Time by the Safdie brothers?
no.
He was good in that, but he plays literally a criminal lowlife.
Oh
It's his
well.
best role.
But I will say that I've seen Timothy Chalamet in other things. I've seen him in Call Me by Your Name. I've seen him in Lady Bird, Little Women. I think he's. I think he's.
You're not a Wonka fan. You didn't see him in
Oh
Wonka.
yes, I did see Wonka, and I actually liked Wonka, and I was charmed enough by it. I think he's good. I don't see why you particularly think that, or anyone thinks that he's terrible. He can be terrible in a terrible film, but on the whole, I think
Like the
he's
first one.
very like no. I think he's good. Well, it's because you're wrong on the first one.
Yeah,
I
sure.
would just say that he's good. I liked him here, and I saw him kind of fight against the idea that he was the Mahdi, or that he could be perceived as a Mahdi. He didn't want to be perceived as a Mahdi, and he didn't believe he was the Mahdi until he decided, well, I'm going to use this to free, the Fremen. But maybe in the back of his mind, he's starting to believe that, yes, maybe I am the chosen one.
The
Maybe
first time
I
the first time he yells at his mom, like, that's not helping or whatever. Like, he got into it better, but it was just like a little. I'm sorry, little Semitic looking Jewish kid, Twinkie Jewish kid, yelling at his mom.
a Twinkie Jewish kid. What does that? I, I'm- I like Twinkies. I
No, but
prefer
to answer the
I
question,
prefer
why is
No,
he
Twinkies.
so
it's
popular? It's because film executives want to fuck him. That's pretty much it.
My
That
gosh,
explains his popularity.
I mean,
Roberto.
maybe this movie should have been directed by Bryan Singer. Anyone ever think about that?
Oh my gosh.
I mean, I'm
Okay.
more or less I apologize. I'm more or less joking because my favorite film critic my favorite film critic I like listening to or whatever, Bret Easton Ellis, is a gay man who likes twinky Jewish young men. So that's why
Mhm.
it's come up the
So
last
what you're
couple
saying
years.
is that he loved this movie, then, right?
He hated the first Dune, so I don't know, but he likes Timothy Chalamet. So that's also why I have a strong opinion on him, because it's like he's been in I've seen him in a lot of different movies and he's never impressed me. This is probably the first time where I was like, okay, that was a solid, good performance by him.
No, I think I think he's done pretty good work in the few films that I can remember him in. I never saw, what was that one? The Boy, The Beautiful Boy, or whatever.
Oh, Beautiful Boy with Steve Carell, where he plays a
Yeah,
drug addict. Yeah, it's
yeah,
terrible.
yeah. I never saw that Oscar bait type thing. So I think he's a good actor, and I liked Wonka. I don't see how he becomes Gene Wilder, but I think he did a cute, charming job. Uh, though Twinkie, I mean, I, I, I mean, I'm thinking of the little candy thing when you say Twinkie. So,
Yeah, sure you are. Anyway, so
well, personally, I prefer ding dongs myself.
yeah, I'm pretty sure you do.
Yeah,
So
preferably frozen. You know, I like to put them in the freezer.
you're not
Though I
helping
haven't.
yourself in this scenario. You're digging a deeper grave of every reference that you make here.
Well, no, I was just saying that it's been a long time because I have lost about almost 40 pounds. And it's because I don't eat as many ding dongs as I used to. You know, especially when I would freeze them. They're very good when they're hard, not when they're not when they're soft and kind of
Okay.
squishy.
Next topic.
Now I did have one at the bank not that long ago, where like I hadn't had one in
You're
years.
just gonna keep digging that hole, huh? You're just not gonna stop.
They're good. I like ding dongs more than Twinkies.
Maybe it's a good thing he doesn't know what a twink is. It's okay.
Yeah, or ding dong too. Like this
A
whole
ding dong
conversation
is
is just completely going over his head. But
those
it's like
little
we're just
chocolate round cakes, you know, that Hostess sells.
okay. Anyway, back to the movie. It's Austin Butler. Let's talk about him here for a second, because his character is obviously brought in to kind of be like this sinister, like hitman, kind of the counter to Timothy Chalamet's character. And there's a big buildup for him throughout the course of the movie. Like he's showing that he has basically no heart for anyone throughout the course of this film. Kills people on a whim, doesn't feel bad about it at all. So they build him up to be this big threat. I thought that he was going to play more of a bigger part in the third film where they were finally going to actually like meet, but apparently it just happens in the second part of this whole trilogy, and they have their fight and he loses and he's gone, he's done, which kind of made the whole thing feel like a complete waste of time, because I felt like they were building up for something a lot bigger, and it was like it's almost like, you know, if you were watching pro wrestling, somebody just, you know, made an impromptu match in the middle of the card and it ended. It was like, oh wait, I thought that guy was like, oh, I guess not, nope, this thing is over. Like I mean, like I said, he gave a solid performance. Like I say, totally transformed himself into this character. But it's like I feel like just kind of like blew him off, like towards the end of the movie, where I was just like, oh, I thought that he would, like I said, he'll be a bigger role in this. Especially as they killed like the fat dude, which we'll talk about here in the film. There's another spoiler, but they killed him. So I was like, okay, so they killed him. So that means that later on in this series, like he's gonna come back because he's gonna need to get back for the part that the fat guy's dead. And it's like, nope, they just kill them both, and we're gonna move on now. So it's like, oh, okay. Then I guess Christopher Walken is the enemy again. What do you think of Austin Butler, Rob?
Yeah, no, I loved his performance. I thought it was incredibly ferocious. He plays a complete psychopath. But I did feel like, you know, especially replacing Batista's character, he was supposed to kind of be the leader on Arrakis. You know, if he was successful, he was going to become whatever, the Baron of Arrakis, or at least oversee it. And I feel like they should have shown him like leading his guys into action, like planning the attack where like one of Zendaya's friends gets killed or whatever. You know, he takes immense pleasure in being able to kill her or whatever. And yeah, I don't know. I wish there was more of him. I wish there was more of a like kind of a showdown leading up to that final one. But you know, this is a problem of trying to fit too much. I mean, I know Words of Paradise was disagreeing or saying there's not that much here. But in terms of the plot, the first movie to the second movie, there really is a lot more that's going on, that's happening, that's kind of occupying screen time. And I really don't think we got enough of Austin Butler's character leading up, because I'll be honest with you, I should have known better as someone who's seen countless movies and read countless stories. It's like, I genuinely was afraid Timothy Chalamet was going to lose that last fight. And it's like, you should know better. But that hats off to the movie and kind of like suspending disbelief for a moment there. But yeah, I wanted maybe the fight to go on a little bit longer if you are gonna kind of shove it in there at the end. But he was like, I look at it this way: Villeneuve was trying to finish that book. This is where Dune ends, where that book, that 900-page book ends, to set up whatever Dune Messiah. So I can understand it, but this is sort of the limitation of the art form you're trying to adapt from. You're trying to adapt literature into a movie, into the cinematic art form, and trying to get everything to fit perfectly just kind of came up short for him. But yeah, I wish there was more Austin Butler. I liked his character. I liked his performance a lot, but just probably a little bit too much you're trying to put into the already incredibly long runtime.
Yeah. Yes, this is where I think that we could have dispensed with some sections in Arrakis, focus more on the Austin Butler character, which is Fade. I forget his name. Fade something or other.
Rotha.
Fade Rotha. Yes, yeah. I think something like that. I love the fact that they kept to that kind of growly, gravelly voice that all of the Harkonnen have. If you hear it, like very kind of deep and kind of growly. Yes, he got that. Butler got that, and he is completely menacing and mesmerizing when you see him. He dominates the screen whenever he's on film, and that's why I think that it's such a shame that they killed him off. This again goes to the original Dune, the David Lynch one, where Sting plays the Austin Butler character, and that it ends in the big battle with them fighting, and he dies. The Fade Rotho, he dies in that one, and that's why I think that it's a mistake to have a third one. I think if they had cut part of Arrakis off and just focused on getting and building up the Austin Butler character, who again is another potential Messiah, because remember that's what the Bene Gesserit were saying, that they have other candidates, and he is one of them. That's why they go down there to basically see what he can do. I thought that they did a good job there. It's just that I wish that he were coming back, him and the Baron. I wish that they were coming back, because you're not going to get much conflict from Christopher Walken. He's a pretty weak character.
So I think what happened here is that they realized that going into this third movie, they had a few too many villains. So in the course of this movie, they just in rapid succession just kind of like either hacked them away and got rid of him entirely, or minimized their threat to where they're no longer like the big bad everyone was expecting. So everyone either died or got completely nullified in this movie, because they want for the third movie, I think they're pretty much playing this up here, that Rebecca Ferguson's character is going to be the villain in the third film. Like, she's going to be the one that everyone's going to be after. You saw that turn with what was her name, Anna Taylor-Joy. Like I said, she's in the movie. Everybody made a big deal about her being in the movie. She's literally on screen for like 10-15 seconds. That's it. She's revealed to be Timothy's sister in the womb, who can communicate with her, like, and whatnot. But obviously the angle that I feel that they're going to go with is that they're going to make it so when, like I said, this quote unquote prophecy is realized, they're going to realize that the mother here kind of lied and manipulated everyone behind the scenes. And once they realize just how deep her deception went, orchestrating this whole thing, that's where everyone's going to turn against her. And that's where you're going to kind of have this civil war with her people. Because, like I said, she's basically like the de facto leader of this whole thing. And she even told the other witch, and because they all look like witches at the end of this, that, you backed the wrong horse. Like, you didn't believe like in my son and all this whole thing. So I think they got rid of of all these characters because they're pretty much propping her up to be the big bad towards the end that they have to fight. So that's what I feel. I don't know if Words of Paradise, if that's backed up in the books or not, but that's certainly the way that they're going off of based on how this film ended and the progression up to it.
Yeah, I mean, if I can just speak real quick, I think it's going to be Florence Pugh who's the villain in the third story or whatever. Just because, I read a little ahead. That's what it is in the book. But
to be fair, you might be right though. But as Words of Paradise has been saying all night, they're not going off the same direction of the book. So
fair
it
enough.
could be,
yeah. I honestly, I don't know what they're gonna do going forward, but that a lot of that stuff's very interesting to me because it's like the whole the Messiah thing they even were talking about it was a created, sort of a created story to keep the masses hopeful that one day someone's going to come, and it's like, how true is it, and to see where that's what they do with that third story is going to be interesting. But yeah, I don't know. I'm trying to like sum up my thoughts here. We'll see. Rebecca Ferguson, her character became almost I don't want to say borderline evil, but like very questionable as it got towards the end there. So yeah, we'll have to see what they do going forward.
Well, I could see her kind of devolving into this almost power hungry individual who wants to use her son to, I guess, enact revenge on her enemies, which is strange because in the first one, and I think in the second one, she says, your father was not about revenge. Now she has become almost drunk with power in a messianic way. I don't know if she will end up being the villain, but I think that, I don't know. At this point, I kind of got lost in what you all were saying. I just wonder though how they're going to go. There is one thing I want to mention real quick. We don't know how this will tie in with that television series that they're having. The Bene
Let's hope it
Gesserit?
has nothing to do with it.
We don't know. We don't know if they're going to try to tie it in as they. So
oh my
that's.
god, we're gonna MCU this god awful universe. This is really what's gonna happen right now.
It's already existed, sir. There's already a massive series of novels.
So there was a moment that I laughed out loud that nobody else in the theater did.
Mm-hmm.
She's saying something like, I think it was Florence Pugh saying about Austin Butler's character. He's psychotic, and Charlotte Rampling just turns around. It's like, that doesn't matter. Just and I don't know why I laughed. Maybe it was just because it's like this person obviously represents like the elitists in our society. Who's basically like, oh yeah, we don't carry the psychopath. It's just about getting the job done.
Yeah, no, there were a couple of times when the audience was laughing, and it wasn't because they thought it was like ridiculous.
Yeah.
I was surprised because the first one is pretty devoid of humor. This one at least manages to sneak in some parts. What is that? What was that one line?
Josh Whedon this film.
What was that one line? Can he be tamed? Well, he can be controlled. I was like, yeah, that's way a lot of women look at men.
Mm-hmm.
But it's also very. I mean, I looked at it more about like the whole like Epstein thing, how like intelligence agencies have all kinds of but you know what I mean, blackmail. That is a way of controlling people that goes back thousands of years.
Now there's something else. Was it that one of the Bene Gesserits, she got knocked up by Fade Rotha, so maybe that child will be an upcoming villain.
I don't know. He killed his own mother, though. I like that little story beat.
Yeah,
that's very Nero-like.
Well, I mean, it is a story about the Antichrist right now.
I don't really think this is a story about the Antichrist. I think it's a more their own space mythology, less than it is
the opening of the movie. Though
it's not a. Go ahead.
No, I just wanted to. The guys in the jetpacks, like the Harkonians, like they were like the climbing jetpack. That I was just like, okay, that looks a little lame. I'm sorry.
Yeah, so the tease here, I guess. I mean, I guess this could be a direction that they're going in, or maybe not. Like I said, everything that's happened in the book apparently they perverted away from the films. But I guess Anna Taylor Joy's character could be born with the souls of all the previous leaders in her mind, and maybe tempts her to turn against her family. It could happen, but does that mean that we're gonna have to like time jump like 30 years for this next movie though? Because she is a child in the context of this film. Like we see her in that one scene where like she's an adult, but that's kind of like a future her. So unless there's gonna be like floating between like present and past, I'm not sure how they're gonna
Well,
like play that
okay,
up.
you
It does
forget
jump
that
ahead like 12 years. Yeah, something like that.
you do forget that the was it the spice can let you kind of travel through time and space quite easily. So it's plausible. But then again, I'm basing this on the David Lynch movie that had a little girl be the sister. She's like kind of a witch too, because she drank from the water of life. So it happened in utero where she possesses
Right.
all these powers. So it's a little curious.
The
I'll just
water
put
of
it
life, aka blue dust. I love that a lot.
that comes from the worms. I
Hmm.
was not aware that the worms were the source of that.
I did laugh at that whole like worm wrangling scene where she has to like do like this weird ritual to get like the little worm to come up, and then she has to like carry it to like the other side of the water and then like drown it and then like stick a straw down its like throat so that it can like I did slightly laugh at the thing. It was a little bit over the top, but it's like I see at least they put some effort into this. So yeah, certainly Doom side jumps ahead 12 years, but I mean, it feels like I'm gonna need a little more than 12 years in order to make that whole thing work, right? Because I mean, isn't Alan like 30?
And I just want to say something real quick. So Florence Pugh's outfits in this, with like like the white outfit and the stuff on her head. I swear
Yeah.
to God, she looked like the Empress from the Never-Ending Story. Like it was
I
I'm
can
sorry.
see that
Every
now.
time I watch this movie and look at like the costuming and the visual layout, I'm like, this is just like every fantasy sci-fi movie from my childhood.
Well, I think that I think they were trying to go for that otherworldly outfits and blend it with some vaguely Arab, Middle Eastern type gear. So it was like I know I cut them some slack for that, but now when I have that vision of that little girl, that movie creeped me out when I saw it. So I'm gonna have to. I don't know if I want to watch it again. But now I give them credit. They were trying to go with something with the various costuming. It's much more sensible than the Lynch costuming. Again, I
Mm.
always revert back to the David Lynch version, which is that's certainly that's certainly something. It's something.
Well, Words of Paradise just gave us a terrifying outlook here that apparently there's two more movies here to look forward to instead of three. That's part three.
I've
So,
told Jacob. I've told you repeatedly that this is a
mhm.
whole not quite
Yeah,
franchise,
it's
but it's a
I
whole
get it. It's
series.
Lord of the Rings for pretentious people. I get it
But
now.
they can
No,
end it after Messiah because that's That's where Paul Atreides. That's the end of his arc. So it's like
Mm.
I don't give a shit. It's like okay, if you're gonna you present his story, that's fine. I'm willing to watch. Okay, I understand. There's 3 books. I don't care. It's 3 movies. That's fine. On 2 books, that's great. I don't know why you would want to go past that other than money. But I
well,
just
this was the
stop.
If
same.
you haven't realized, Warner Brothers needs the money. So,
This is the same problem that they had when they adapted The Hobbit and made 3 very long, massive films out of a book that you could tell in one 70 odd minute animated movie that even had musical numbers in it. So they're going to stretch it out. They stretched it out far too long with with The Hobbit. I can see the temptation
yeah.
with Dune, especially because Dune is such a massive book already.
Apparently the third book has a lot to do with children that Hollywood won't touch for the obvious reasons. And I was like, man, that guy really must not like the Catholic Church. Then that's what we're gonna go to in the third film. So I don't look. I'll say this way: I've been in a little bit nonchalant about this whole film, but I did say that it was better than the first movie. The first one bored me to absolute tears. It was certainly a better effort than that. I thought the story was a lot easier to follow. Maybe you had one too many characters, or let's be honest, about 4 or 5 too many characters when it was all said and done. But then again, you killed most of them, so I guess that helps out matters too. Visually, it looks good. The acting was solid enough. They did a good job at least selling the universe that they were creating here. But I still had my flaws with the film. I don't like the fact that it was still longer. You still had the pacing issues. You still have issues in the storytelling. So, like, kind of like what Rob was saying earlier, there's things to like about this movie and there's things not to like about this movie. I'm just pretty much in the middle with this film. So if I'm giving this film a fair rating, I probably say this is about a 2.5 out of 5 for me. And I think I'm strongly leaning towards giving it that. Like I said, it's not enough for me to get like a solid like 3 out of 5 rating, but it's not anything worse than that. Like I said, the first one was way much of a cinematic mess than this one is. This one cleaned up a lot of the flaws, not all of them, but cleaned up enough of them to where it was a much more enjoyable experience than the first one. So I'll give it a solid 2 out of 5. Rob, I'll go with you. Final thoughts, and then we'll go with Rick.
Yeah, I do like a lot of the aims that Denis Villeneuve went for here. I like the large scale epic storytelling intent that he's going for. And Dune itself incorporating politics, culture, religion, all to really make this grand statement about humanity and our pursuit for power and control and resources and all this stuff. I just think it falls short of being able to sum up and have that commentary. I think it's an immense achievement just undertaking it. You know what I mean? But I do feel like the results are a bit underwhelming considering what it is, considering now we've seen 5 hours of this 900-page work of literature adapted now into 5 hours of cinema. It's a bit underwhelming. This movie, I really liked a lot of the performances. I liked a lot of the spectacle. The worm stuff was fun. It's just a little too long. The pacing is a bit of an issue. I think some of the characters are a bit thin, even if the movie does its best to kind of move you past it. And as we get into that second act and Austin Butler's villain character, like there's a lot of really good things here. There's a lot of positives. Just as a whole, in terms of the composition, I think it falls short. I gave it a 3 out of 5. I am open to changing that on rewatch to possibly as high as 3.5 out of 5. But yeah, I think 3 out of 5 is about right. And like I said, good things here. The relationship between Chalamet and Zendaya's performance, some of the themes that get talked about. I'll say this from seeing 5 hours of Dune so far. I I know this is going to be a weird thing to say. I like the willingness to show a cruel and unforgiving world. Characters that are evil, and if they're not evil, they do some really questionable things. So I like that. I like challenging narrative structures like that. But yeah, I give it a 3 out of 5. Has some issues. But I'm definitely more open to seeing where they end it with the next movie.
Well, Rick.
Well, I love the first one. It was my second best film of that year. I enjoyed this one, though I think it is longer than it should be. I do wish that they had just kept two instead of trying to make a third one. I was disappointed that you had small parts really for the characters like Christopher Walken, and so I wish that we had seen more of that. But again, like Rob, I found more positives than negatives. So some of the performances were great, visually arresting. I was really impressed that there were certain scenes that were really got me, and the performances were quite good. I don't really think that there was a really terrible performance. Well, Dave Batista, but Butler was great. I don't think I'm not so crazed that I'll say, oh yeah, he's gonna win Best Supporting Actor here. All right, I wouldn't object to him getting a nomination, but I don't expect like he's not like Robert Downey Jr. or or someone that's gonna just win from the
If he
beginning.
gets a nomination for this movie, like we are in serious trouble. Because I mean, the first 2 months of this year has been pretty rough, and if this is the best that we can pull out here, it's like
Well,
yes,
so far this is the best. This is certainly better than Argyle. So I'm
that's a
going
low
to.
bar.
I will say that I obviously liked it more than you guys did. But I'm going to give it maybe a 3.5. My fandom wants to push it to 4, but I think a 3.5 is respectable. It's a good film, good performances, visually, it's a spectacle. It has, I think Hans Zimmer scores better here than it was in Dune Part One. So on the whole, I think it's a good film. It's probably the best one I've seen this year. Yes, again, I know we've had some really bad films this year, so but on the whole, I'm going to give it a 3.5, 3.5 out of 5.
Yeah, I thought the score was almost a direct. I mean, I don't want to say rip off because that's rude, but it was very much influenced by Vangelis's Blade Runner score. So
Well,
Fair enough.
I don't know. I mean, for me, it seemed to be more like I was listening to some Arabic style sounds, especially in the desert. So I get that, but I don't know if it really matches Blade Runner. I'm trying. I mean, I remember Blade Runner is more. It seemed more electronic to me.
right, the specific score that I'm talking about is the I guess the refrain that kept playing whenever there was like a romantic, a romantic moment or intimate moment between Zendaya and Timothy Chalamet. So, but yeah, I'll send you the sample or whatever if I find it in
Okay,
terms of
well, I
what
mean,
musical piece.
yeah, I mean, I have no problem watching Blade Runner again and just
Yeah.
listening to the score. So,
Yeah.
but I don't quite hear it. I think it's more like almost new agey, but
Hmm.
I'll,
Yeah.
I'll go with it. So I'm going to give it, like I said, 3.5.
Like I said, with the exception of Rick here, I can say I think me and Rob are more favorable to this movie than the last one was. Like I said, the last one was just kind of like a bout of attrition more than the film here. But obviously, you have a much bigger view of the first one than we did, so it feels like, for your perspective, this was a little bit less than the first movie. Is that fair to say?
Slightly, yeah. Although again, I saw Dune Part One 4 times. This one I might only see twice.
Yeah, and let the record show. Of course, the Hispanics think the first one's better than the second one.
and,
So just saying, there's a little
and
bit of correlation there.
and I will point out that Rob is only a quarter Mexican, so he's probably less enthusiastic than the
Hmm. Well, I mean,
full
he did give it
Mexicans.
half a star, so I mean,
Yeah.
well, yeah, I mean that's it for Doom. And look, as much as it pains me to say this, this is one of the better movies that I've seen so far this year. We're 2 months into 2024 so far. I've only given two films a 3.5 out of 5. Like that's my highest rating so far this year. Is 3.5 out of 5. 2 months into the year. And honestly, like if I had to do a top 5 list right now, this movie would probably be on it, and that's not a good thing. So yeah, so we're in on a rough spot here. I don't think it's going to improve much. Next week we don't really have any new releases coming out, especially in theaters, because all of the studios kind of like panned out for Dune here. So Dune's going to dominate here for at least the next couple of weeks, which means that we can do a movie night here. And this will probably be the last movie night for the foreseeable future, only because I haven't really planned another night to do so here. But we will be doing a movie night next Friday night here on this show. And I guess it's time to figure out what movie that's going to be. Here's the wheel. It's been here for a while. We have Live from Baghdad, Notorious. I added Josie and the Pussycats. Tremors has been on here since the Clinton administration. Attack of the Killer Green Tomatoes or Killer Tomatoes. Halloween 3, Lionheart, Small Soldiers, Hard Times, and Used Cars. So let's see what movie we're going to be watching on Friday night, next Friday here on the
Watch
show.
it be Tremors. Watch it be Tremors.
It's got a shot. It's got a shot. It's got a shot. It's got a shot. Holy shit.
Holy
Holy
shit.
shit.
We finally landed on it. Oh man, this thing has been on here for literally 2 years, and we finally landed on Tremors. So next Friday night, we'll be watching Tremors here live on the program. There you go. How you feel, Rick?
I'm not gonna get to see it.
Well, that's your problem. That's all I got.
I'm not gonna get to see it. Where am I gonna be? I think I'm gonna be at medieval times.
That's
Wait.
all your fault.
Hey, no. It's not my fault. It's Stevie Nicks' fault.
Sure. But hey, Paulie, if you want to be here with us next week, we're going to watch Tremors live on the show. So
yeah, you got to represent the Latinos. Come on.
When I
Especially
rewatched it a couple years ago, and I was like, is that Reba McEntire?
Yes. Yep. Oh, there's a lot of faces on there that you remember. I should just pull a heel move and just make you guys watch Tremors 2 instead. But I'll be honored.
Hey, I liked that as a kid, so I haven't seen it in a long time.
But for a direct to video movie, Tremors 2 is actually not that bad. Like, you know, obviously they lost Kevin Bacon and a few other people, but I mean, it's not a bad movie. It's not until like Tremors 3 where it starts going completely off the rails, but Tremors 2 not as much. But that's what we got coming up here. So I'll go ahead and shoot this one over to you guys as we wrap things up. So Rob, we'll start off with you. Where can people find you?
Yep. So my Twitter is just at Rob Motto Movies. That's the same for my YouTube. I'm doing a weekly podcast. I skipped last week just due to lack of content or things to talk about. But this week we have a bunch of shit to talk about, including the Oscars coming up, and you know, there's other stuff. Kevin Costner has a new movie out. I don't know. People are bitching about something. I'll talk about Dune 2. Maybe I'll feature some tweets that are ridiculous, but that's coming up Wednesday at noon. And then I need to get a couple of reviews out, Drive Away Dolls and Dune 2. So just look for those on my Twitter, because that's where they'll be.
All right then, Rick, what you got coming up?
All right. Well, I've got more reviews. I'm actually looking forward to the Oscars. I'll have to bone up on the lyrics to "I'm Just Ken" so that I could sing along, and that's pretty much it. At least until I go see my goddess this week. So there's that. Yeah. Other than that, I'm gonna miss Tremors. I'm so disappointed.
Once again, that's all your fault. So,
it's not my fault. If it's the choice between Tremors and Stevie Nicks, I'm always going to pick Stevie Nicks. I mean, I'm sorry. I'm not going to miss a legend just so I could watch something that I can get from the library.
Hey, I'm not surprised, motherfuckers.
All right then. So let you guys know what we got coming up here. So yeah, next Friday we're watching Tremors, so that's going to be a thing. So catch us here on YouTube, Rumble, X. I might even go on Twitch for that one as well. So we'll have a few things lined up for that week. That's next Friday night. This coming Monday, Shagsworth is joining us for the Monday Night Bible Ends. I've had a discussion with Spencer from Bounding in the Comics over the last 2 weeks. If you haven't caught those 2 episodes, definitely check those out. They've been very in-depth conversations. Very, very productive conversations too, so I really enjoyed that. Then we got the Barroom episode 89 coming up on Tuesday night, so we're pulling up very, very fast here on 100. That's going to be coming soon. Over the next few hours, I'm going to be writing a couple articles for Bounding in the Comics. Hopefully have those up ready to go. Then I'm going to have some content added to the side reviews as well. And I'm really strongly considering a direction change for the site because I want to be in a position where people can contribute to the site and kind of like do some things, but obviously I need to have a fleshed out direction, which takes some time and whatnot. So I'm gonna work on getting that together. I'm also gonna work on moving a lot of the Bible content over to the second channel, which is Bible Ends. It's not live just yet, 'cause I still have to add some things to it before it officially goes live, but we are working on getting that together. So I got a lot of stuff going on right now. So just follow me all over there. If you in the video link here, you have all the links to like Twitter pages and stuff like that. So I got a lot of things we'll pull together here. We got a lot of exciting things coming up here for the show. So for everyone who joined us here tonight for the show, Paulie, Words of Paradise, Rooftop Korean, Brandon, Top Dog who joined us earlier, Tachu Sama, Dante was here a little bit earlier as well. Kirk over at Rumble joining us here tonight. Thank you all for joining us. Hopefully we'll see you guys Monday night, if not Tuesday. If not, we'll see you guys next Friday night. We're finally going to watch Tremors. It's been 2 years, and we're finally going to watch this movie, so you better show up next week here on the show. But until then, adios, good night. We're hitting the outro. Night.
It's over. Go home.
Get the hell out! Get out! Get out! Get out!
Okay.
Get out! Get out!